This is lesson 4 in the JavaEE web development series. And today we're going to be talking about source code control and integrating our project with a source code control tool called Git. Very briefly, source code control allows us to have to manage all of the changes that we make to our source code. It allows us to have multiple people working on the same project and merge changes together. If two people are working on the same file, you can merge those together and make sure things don't get lost. It also allows us to track the changes that are made over time, so you can see what you did a month ago or 2 months ago and undo changes or adjust things as necessary. There are two different kinds of source code control tools. Some are centralized source code control systems, and that basically means that there is a central repository that holds kind of the master version of the source code control of the source code for your project. Each person would get a copy of that master, or pull down the master branch, and then edit on their local machine and promote it back up to the master repository. Git is actually a distributed source code control tool, which basically means that each person has a copy of the repository, and there really is no master repository. You can move code, promote code from one repository to another, or anything like that. However, we're also going to be using a tool called GitHub, which is an online resource, and we're going to create a repository on GitHub that will essentially function as our master repository. So you'll have a local repository on your machine that will contain a copy of the project, and you'll make changes on it. You can save those changes into your local repository, and then when you're ready, you can promote it up to the GitHub master repository, and then other team members can pull down the project from GitHub in its current state and work on it, and also promote back up to the GitHub repository. So GitHub will basically be working as our master for us, but you can also work locally in a variety of different ways. If you have a central network server in your intranet, you can configure that and allow multiple people to have access to a local repository there, or promote from their own local repository to something on your local intranet. But we'll configure it using GitHub for today and go from there. The first thing that we need to do is to make sure that the tools are installed to access Git from Eclipse. We have our Eclipse project up here. There's a package called eGit, and we're going to make sure that we have that installed on in Eclipse for us. So we'll go to Help and then Eclipse Marketplace. This Marketplace has a variety of different tools and plugins and things for Eclipse that we can use. So I'm going to type in eGit in the find box here, and then click Go, and you will see that there is a package called eGit, the Git team provider. Now, I already have this installed on my this version of Eclipse. You may or may not have it installed. If not, just click on Install here. You can also click on this Installed tab, and we'll see that I do have eGit installed. You can uninstall it here. This may also say Update, so you could update it to the latest version. So you may have it installed. If not, just click on Install Now, and that will download and install automatically into Eclipse. So now we've got eGit, the plugin here for Eclipse. We do need to do a couple of things to configure eGit. So we're going to go to Window and Preferences, and in Windows Preferences there's a section for Team, and if you expand Team, there's now a section for Git. If you click on that, so on your local machine, all of our Git repositories will be stored in a specific directory on our machine. By default, they will go here in Users, and then this is my username for this machine, and Git. You can change this to put them anywhere else you want to on your machine, but I'm going to go ahead and leave this default. The one other thing we need to do, if we expand Git, there's a section for configuration. We need to configure the Git user to, when you add files or change files in your Git repository, it keeps track of who is making those changes. So we need to add our a username so that it knows who is making what particular changes. Again, you can have multiple users configured for a repository. In this case, we'll just need one. So we click on Add Entry, and you're going to type in user.name. That's just the notation that Git uses to identify the current user. You can configure this however you want. If you want usernames to be things like, Conrad SP or any combination of first name, last name, you can do that. You can also configure it to use email addresses. I'm going to set it up like this for now, so you can have everybody's email address in here as their username. If you just click on OK, you can see that now we have a Git user with this username. And we'll go ahead and hit OK here. So now Git is configured. We've got our auction site project here. Now what we want to do is add this project to Git. We're going to create a local Git repository on our machine for this project. So we right-click on the project. We're going to click on Team and then say Share Project. Now, I had already had this configured once, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. What you will do here is create a new repository. Click on Create. It's going to ask where you want to have that created. I've found that sometimes you just need to type a character to get the Finish button, and you can hit Finish, and it will create a Git repository for your project in this directory. Because I had this set up once already, I'm going to go ahead and put this here. There we go. So you should get here, but basically we're setting up our Git repository on this machine. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to add all of the files to our local Git repository. Basically, I want to say everything in this project, put it into the source code control system. So we're going to go to Team, and then you say Add to Index. That's going to add all of our files to the repository. And it's going to go through and do that. You will see little pluses here. Again, this is a little bit different because I had already created the repository. You'll see little pluses here. Now, all the files have been added to the repository, but nothing is done, similar to working with a database system, nothing is done until you actually commit your changes. So we're going to right-click on our project again. We're going to say Team, and we're going to say Commit. This is going to commit any changes. So in this case, our changes are we're adding a bunch of files to this repository. You'll see a little dialog pop up here, and we can type in a message that basically is something we can type in to say what we're doing here. I'm fixing a particular bug, or I'm adding code for this new functionality. In this case, my message will just be initial add, and then we'll click on Commit, and those changes have been committed. One of the nice things with Git is you can see everything that has happened to your project. So we're going to go to Team, and we're going to say Show in History. And this will pop up a dialog that basically says, here are the things that happened. This is when I created the repository, and then where we added files. And you can kind of dive into all of these things. You can see everything that happened. You can do a diff, you can compare versions, you can see all the different files that were added. So when I did my initial creation, these are all of the files that were added. You can see our HTML files, our CSS, the Java files, those were all added to Git. So you can see everything that happened in each commit. You can compare files from one version to another. virtual commit, and compare with each other. So you can see there's just different things that were. You can see what happened on each commit, things like that. So I'm going to close up that tab. So now we have a local Git repository that has all of the files in our project. What we'd like to do is we're going to push those out to an online service that will kind of act as a master. So if we have multiple people working on this, they all have access to it from an online site. So we're going to use GitHub, and the URL is just github.com. It's a free service. There are paid options, but it works well for free. You can go ahead and click on sign up. I've already created an account here, but you'll just add a username, an email address, and a password. Create your account. You'll have to verify your email address. But once you've done that, I'm going to go ahead and sign in with the account that I created. You'll get back to this same screen. And so once you've created your account, you're going to say start a project. And so this is going to have an online repository for our auction site project. So I'm going to call this auction site. You can give it a description if you want to. Everything is public unless you want to pay for private repositories. It's fine generally to have a public repository. And then you're going to say create repository. So it's creating this new Git repository for us. Now what we want to do is using eGit, we want to link our local repository to this online GitHub repository. So if you click on, we just need to get the address of where the GitHub repository is. And so it is this address here, so you're just going to go ahead and copy it. This little clipboard button, copy to clipboard. This is the URL that we need. Now, we're going to right-click. Close this out here. I'm going to right-click here, go to Team again, and I'm going to say Remote, and push. We want to push to a remote site. The URL is going to be what we saw here, what we just pasted. This is where that remote site is. It's on github.com, and there's the path to it. The protocol is HTTPS, and then you need to put in your GitHub login information. You just created that GitHub account, put in the information for that account. We'll say next. And then you're going to click on Add All Branches. So this is going to add basically everything in our local repository to the remote GitHub repository. So you click on that, and then you can just say Finish. And it's going to go ahead and upload everything to GitHub. So now if we go to GitHub here, and we click on the auction site, we will see we have an auction site. Here are all of the files. Source main, here's our web app, CSS, and our JavaScript. Everything is up here. Now the nice thing is somebody else can go ahead and configure Eclipse and can actually pull from that. You use pull to pull from the master site. So we're not configured for that yet. Here we can set it up to pull. You'd go to here, and you'd say, where do you want to pull from? You give your authentication again, and then it will basically download that entire repository into Eclipse for you. So that's how other users can access this repository. Now, I'll just show you briefly. I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of just quick changes here. Oops. Test. Let's see here. Oops. Source, main, Java. There we go, sorry. Alright, so So I'm just going to go ahead and make, I don't know, a change to our CSS file. So we'll edit it here. I don't know, I'm just going to add something. Just add an element test. So now I have made a change to auction site. This is basically letting me know that a change has been made to this file. So go to team, and then I can say commit. And I'm putting a message that added CSS element. You can commit, that'll commit it to our local repository. I can do a commit and push, which will update the local repository and automatically push it up to our GitHub repository. So type in this. If I say secure store in secure store, then I won't have to type that every time. So I'll merge it, and there it is. So now that's been updated. Okay. Oops. Just missed that. Go ahead and get rid of that. So now this has been changed, and now if I go to GitHub, CSS, auction site.css, it says add a new CSS element, and there it is up here. And then anybody else who pulls from our GitHub repository will get these latest changes. Again, I can see history on, if I say team, show in history, I can see the history of this file. So this is when it was initially added. Diff to that one. And it should tell me what we've got here, sorry. I just said this is the baseline. And then do this. And let's see. Compare with each other. Sorry, that's what I was saying. So basically you can see that in the old version it didn't have this, and in the new version this was added. So you can see what was done. So again, sorry, I kept looking in quick diff. You want to say compare with each other. So you can pick which versions you want to compare, and you can see exactly what changed from version to version. So that's the basics on using source code control in Git with Eclipse.